Welcome to Pathways Through the Prairie. I am your host, State Librarian Mary Soucie. We will interview North Dakota librarians and library staff, state government leaders, and interesting North Dakotans. Join me as we meander down the pathways through the prairie. I'm joined today by James River Valley Library Director Joe Rector. I've known Joe for almost 10 years, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. So thank you, Joe, for joining me.
Well, thank you for the invitation, Mary. I always love to talk to you, and I'm so appreciative for the services offered by the state library. So I'm just really glad to be here with you today.
Awesome. That's very kind of you to say. And I did not even pay $1 for that plug. So thanks, Joe. So we're going to go ahead and start off. The mission of the State Library is creating pathways to information and innovation. So what was your pathway to your current position as a library director?
You know, my pathway started out in second grade when I learned how to read. You see, my first grade teacher was a very, very nice man, but he taught what was called whole language reading, and that is you teach the word, the kid recognizes the word, and the kid says the word. Okay. I didn't learn to read through that method. I was I was interested in different things. I loved books. My mother would read to me, but it took until second grade when my second grade teacher pulled several of us up to the front of the classroom, and which was a little embarrassing, but she taught us phonics. And all of a sudden, I discovered I could read.
Oh,
And
that's
by the end of
wonderful.
that year, I was one of the best readers in the class. And that started me on the path to wanting to um, eventually become a librarian. But it went through the career of teacher first. Um, I had such wonderful experiences at libraries. My parents bought a set of books called Childcraft, which a lot of other families had too. And on it, it said the How and Why Library. So I demanded that my mother take me to that fabled How and Why Library. And she said the local public library would have to do. And so, from that time, getting my first library card, I was hooked. So, you know, um, my first actual librarian position was a volunteer position at a boarding school, a church run boarding school. And so I taught myself how to catalog um, using various things that they had in the library. H.W. Wilson's resource on what books should be in a high school library, and I started looking at the call numbers, and then we had an old set of Dewey Decimal books, and I started figuring out how this worked and comparing to books on the shelf, and pretty soon I was cataloging books, and I turned that into becoming an English and history teacher. And at each of my schools, I volunteered to help with the library, and eventually got accepted into the University of Oklahoma because I wanted to get a master's in something, and I didn't want it to be in education itself. I wanted it to be in some type of specific profession, and so I did masters in library studies.
Wow. So for our listeners who aren't maybe as familiar with how the library works, it's very unusual to teach yourself cataloging. Cataloging is pretty complicated. It has lots of very specific rules. When I took my cataloging class, we actually still typed catalog cards for the physical card catalog. We were one of the last classes to do that. And cataloging is not for me because there's a lot of rules on where the period has to go in, but it's so important. It's the backbone of the library. If you don't have a good catalog, people can't find what they're looking for. So it sounds like you had a really interesting lead into libraries, but your love of libraries started a long time ago. Did you think you would eventually end up in libraries as you were, you obviously were a lover of reading, but did you ever think, I want to be a librarian? Or did it just kind of happen that way?
Well, as a kid, I dreamed about being either a librarian, a teacher, or a pastor. I've
Wow.
done two of those. I think that these will be the only two of the three, but I've done two of those. And so while I was teaching, I thought my next move would be into a school media specialist, but it turned out that I resigned my position working for the church school that I was at because I changed faiths, you see, and it no longer worked. And so the only gig I had going was going to school at University of Oklahoma for my master's degree. And then I thought I wanted to be a reference librarian at a college library. But
So, ha-
strangely enough, my wife put pressure on me to apply to James River Valley Library System because she had relatives in Jamestown, North Dakota.
that answered
So
my question. I
I
was going to say, how do you
applied
end up in public
I
libraries?
applied, and I got hired before I had even graduated. Can you imagine that? It was truly incredible. They went through 6 interviews and didn't come to an agreement with anyone, and so they went back, and I was one of the applications left on the heap. And but I was still working on my master's thesis, and it was about Christian themed information and church libraries. And anyway, but they hired me anyway, and I continued to work on that thesis and eventually got it done and got the credential that I had always dreamed of having.
That's wonderful. So 2 out of 3 on your childhood bucket list. That's pretty good odds, Joe.
You
Uh,
know,
I
two out of
I
three ain't bad.
2 out of 3 isn't bad. I wrote a list when I was 21 of the 10 things I wanted to do before I died. Back then, we didn't have the term bucket list, and
Right.
I've got about 8 of them done. So
Wow.
we'll see if I get those last 2 done or not. Like you, I might have to put one of them to rest. So what are some of the differences? You've been a school librarian and a public librarian. What are some of the differences?
Well, you know, at school, you kind of have a captive audience. The kids need to come to the library. Sometimes they prefer to come to the library as an option over study hall. But there are a lot of similarities too. I think one of the biggest similarities is that I consider myself now an educator for the community.
Mhm.
I was an educator for a narrow group of students for a while, but now in terms of the materials that I can purchase for the library, um, I keep thinking, somebody needs this information, whether it's health information, whether it's information about our region, whatever it is, somebody needs this information. Somebody needs to know how to interview for a job. Somebody needs to have this information. So, I I really enjoy doing that, and I enjoy the opportunity to give presentations as well about various library issues. And so I consider myself a teacher for the community.
I love that analogy. At my last library where I was director before I came to the state library, my predecessor used to say that librarians are like bartenders because everyone wants to tell us their story. And I loved that analogy, and it's so true. Everyone trusts us and wants to tell us their story. I really like the idea of being a lifelong teacher, though. That's really cool. I was a teacher in my former profession, not for as long as you were, but it really is true. What are some of the favorite ways that your library has of bringing that education, that personal enrichment forward for your patrons?
Well, we do a lot of programming for people. So, you know, after school, we have a middle school less than a block away from our main library. The kids come over. We get about 40 kids after school, um, and we do programs for them. So there will be games, there will be crafts, there will be STEAM opportunities, you know, a video occasionally. So we're really working to build these kids up. A lot of these kids are ones who don't have any other place to go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's some kids actually who have a long walk back home from school, and they stop into our library. These young people are from the high school, actually, so it's not half a block; it's a few miles.
Oh,
They
wow.
walk a few miles to get to the library, and they use our resources. They stay for a while. They get warmed up. They even walk, in the dead of winter. So they have a snack with the kids, and then they head on to their home. And so it's just such a neat way that we can serve the public. We give programs for adults as well. So just reaching out, you know, I love making information fun. So, and you do that through stories. So I think it goes back to teaching teenagers, to keep them interested isn't easy.
Right.
So, but you take those same skills as a librarian when you're doing a program, and your program may be about censorship. Could be boring or it could be very interesting, and it's all going to depend on the stories.
Mm-hmm. And I think your reference skills come into play as well. How do reference skills come into play when you're planning a program?
Well, you're looking for a lot of information. So, you know, whether it's scouring the internet, whether it's finding information in library journals, whether, I get the privilege of purchasing materials. So I'm buying materials that I know I'm going to need to refer to later. So, yeah, that's kind of how it comes into play.
And I think you mentioned earlier you taught English and history. Do you have a favorite historical period or just all history?
Oh, that's a good question. I enjoy Tudor history. I've done
And what
quite a
time
bit of
period is that?
reading on that. Well, it's right around the 1500s in
Okay.
England. So, you know, Henry VIII, Queen Elizabeth, so on and so forth. Um, you know, it followed the Wars of the Roses, which were immensely destabilizing for England, um, and resulted in the deaths of a whole lot of various uh, persons in the royal families. You know, it was a drop dead, drag out, changing allegiances war. So, you know, to understand the Tudor period, you kind of have to understand the Wars of the Roses. But and then the Tudor period leads into the era of exploration, so on and so forth. I enjoy U.S. history. I like Plymouth, Jamestown, all those early settlements. I love the Civil War. Um, so pretty much everything, but those few things really jump out at me.
Hmm. It sounds like you do a lot of historical reading as well. Do you travel also?
You know,
Like
I used to
related to history?
I used to take my students on trips to New England, um, the Middle Atlantic, even the South. So we went to places like New York, Boston, Washington D.C., up to Maine, Monticello, the Biltmore Estate. Um, so, actually seeing those places is really a tremendous way of learning history. And I'm trying to get that integrated actually with our library. So it's a dream of mine to begin leading tours of people from Jamestown to different historical locations. And we would go through a tour company. And so people would pay for the tour directly, but it would be librarian led. So, and we would be emphasizing books and different literature connections to the sites visited. And I just think that people would be interested in going with a group of people and learning. And I think kind of the cherry on top would be that we'd like to put together a book of pictures.
Mm.
So, and then put that in the library.
Wow,
So
now
you could
you're
take
appealing to the
part of a tour
scrapbooker in
and
me.
then you could be part of the library. I did that with the last student tour that I ever led, and they were a great group of kids the whole trip. It was a 10-day trip and they were never late.
Wow.
And yes, yes. And I put together a book of the different pictures, and kids bought the book at cost from me, and I still keep a copy of that in my office because it's the one book I've not really written, but the
Mhm.
pictures were mine. So would like to do that, and I just think, wow, how cool! You could be remembered forever in the library you love with pictures of you participating in a trip. And I just think that's the kind of outside the box thing that libraries need to do. People think that libraries are just books, 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 boring books. Absolutely not. We are books, but we are so much more. So, you know, if we don't branch out and think creatively, algorithms could take over, and impersonally deliver a lot of information to people. Whether it's correct information or not, algorithms could do that. And libraries could actually be replaced by those algorithms, you see? But what what we as a profession have been working on actually for years now is how do we interact with the community in creative ways to bring people into the library. And so that's why a library as a teaching location, is important. The library as a location to play games. You think play games? You know, people are playing card games, all kinds of things, and they can be brought into the library as a location where folks can meet to play their Dungeons and Dragons or play whatever they'd like to play. We just did a puzzle competition at Alfred Dickey Library. Actually, we did it across the street at the Masonic Temple. We rented that and we filled the whole main floor. We had 20 teams. We had almost 100 people come through that building. And this was just this past Saturday. We did a puzzle competition
Tell
and
me what a
people
puzzle
were
competition
thrilled.
is, Joe. What's a puzzle
Well,
competition?
every team starts off with a brand new puzzle, and it's the same puzzle. And so whoever finishes first is first place. And so teams of four, some of them were three and two, but they worked to put a 500-piece puzzle together, and we had 3D printed prizes for them, and
Wow.
people were delighted. you know.
And once the first team stopped, or what's the first team completed, did other teams continue, or did they're like, okay, they're done, I'm good?
No, everybody kept going.
So everybody completed the puzzle.
Yes. So most of the teams were just in it for the fun. There were several
Mm-hmm.
teams that were very organized, and we're very intent on winning the small prize and getting their picture taken as champion of the first annual James River Valley Library System puzzle tournament, you know. But that's the kind of thing. Libraries are becoming outside the box entities. Otherwise, technology could arguably replace us, but can't
I
replace the personal level of information we can
Oh,
give.
so absolutely. I always say that libraries are the heart or the center of their community.
Yeah.
And the things you're talking about really speak to that. And there are libraries that do tours. Like when I was a librarian in the Chicagoland area, we did tours, bus trips. We didn't call them tours, a bus trip to the zoo or, to a play downtown or something like that. But a library led tour of historical places is so incredibly interesting to me. It's unique. Like you said, it's outside the box thinking, meeting a need maybe for someone who isn't going to have any other way to go explore these sites. I love the idea. So when it happens, let me know. Sign me up. I would love that.
All right. Our
As,
first tour that we want to do, and it's not scheduled or anything like that. We were planning it prior to COVID, and then everything got thrown off. But we were going to do a tour to South Dakota and go to the Mount Rushmore area, Crazy
oh,
Horse
fun.
Monument, so on and so forth, Deadwood, and see some of the natural wonders combined with the historic sites. And it was just going to be maybe a 3 or 4 day trip. So
Hmm.
we're just going to see, you know, if that's something people would get behind and enjoy.
Well, I love the thought behind it. Thinking how can we meet the needs of our community in a different, new way, and I think it's fantastic. What are some of the other things, ways that your library is working to meet the needs of your community? You talked about programs. You talked a little bit about resources.
Yeah, well, a couple things. We now have two 3D printers, and I think technology education is a real need, and it's been talked about for years and years. But to have these um, wonderful machines really available for people to use, and we use grant money to also buy an iMac to go with one of those 3D printers so that people can actually access the program to design things for themselves. I think this is a wonderful thing. You know, I can't afford a 3D printer. I can't do that. But can I learn to use it at the library? Yes, I can.
Mm.
You see, we bought a Cricut machine, and I believe I heard you at our conference say that you would love to come and do a program teaching people to use the Cricut machine, and I would like to invite you to Jamestown to come and do that.
Absolutely, we can get that on the calendar. I'm in a month-ish. We have our library coordinating council, which is our advisory group, and the librarian there asked me if I would do some cricket training for the staff and the board. So we talked through what that might look like, and I'm going to do that in a while. So yeah, I'd love to get that on the books. I've been a Cricut user for a long time. Actually, since there has been a Cricut, I have
Right.
had one. So 20 years. And for those people who are listening who may not know what the heck is a Cricut is simply a die cutting machine that you use in various crafts. I got mine for card making and scrapbooking. And now I do a lot of vinyl with mine. I make t-shirts and different things for people. So I absolutely love my Cricut.
It's amazing what you can do with that.
Oh, it's incredible. Jill, what's one thing you would like our listeners to take away about you as a librarian and about your library system?
Well, I am here for you. That's what I want people to take away. And we have 14 other librarians, and they're here for you too. And wherever you live, in whatever city or town, if you've got a library, your librarians are here for you. So that's the most important thing. So we are not just a jumble of technology. We're actually people. Libraries are about people. We have books for people, magazines for people, technology for people, spaces for people. It's all about people. Sometimes that's been forgotten. Sometimes the public may even not realize we're here for you.
Well said. And for those who live in North Dakota and don't have a local public library, guess what? The state library is here for you. So we got you covered, whether it's at the local level or at the state level, we have you covered. Joe, it has been so fun to talk to you today and to learn a little bit about your pathway into the library world and just your thoughts as a library director and the fun and exciting things that your library is doing. Thank you so much for joining me today on Pathways Through the Prairie. I have really enjoyed this. I always love talking to you. It's great to hear more about you, about your views as a librarian. It's great to hear so much more about your library as well. And I'm going to let your thought just end with us. We're just going to end it with that thought. We are here for you. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary.
Have you just discovered a new author or you've started a series and you want to know what to read next? Novelist can help you out with that. Novelist is a great resource where you can plug in the name of an author, the name of a series, the title of a book, or choose what parts of the book you just finished that you really liked and you want to find similar reads. Novelist is available with a library card from your local public library in North Dakota or the North Dakota State Library. Log on to www.library.nd.gov, click on online library resources and scroll down the novelist. Give it a try. And if you need any help, we are always available via phone, email, or online to give you a hand.